Yeah, sorry, I don't really have any Chinese franchise clothing right now, so Japanese will have to do. Sorry. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Animation Station, which is your for anything and everything animation. Today's an exciting day because after a couple of delays, today's finally the day. We are finally talking about the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I have been very excited to talk about these. Now, yes, I have been very worried about how this fourth one's going to turn out, the one that's coming out literally tomorrow. And I was originally going to do this one day at a time, but scheduling conflicts came into effect, and unfortunately it kind of screwed everything up, so I'm still stuck playing catch-up again. But it's not as bad this time because I only have to do 3 reviews and then 1 extra review for the Daily Miraculous thing. But yeah, today we're finally diving into Kung Fu Panda, in my opinion, the best DreamWorks franchise, yes, even over Shrek and Dragons. So, why don't we go ahead and just not waste any more time and get this started by taking a look at the original, released in 2008. Yep, the same year as Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and the Lego Batman video game. I know, random, but that's one of the things I remember 2008 the best for, because I played that Lego Batman game like you would not believe. I played it all the time. So, I'm legit excited because this is still a genuinely great movie, and to my surprise, it's honestly even better over time. Like, when I first watched this movie, I still thought it was great, but I thought it still had some issues. Watching it now, it still has a few issues, but I honestly think it's even better. And with time and with age, it has gotten even more enjoyable and even more entertaining. Maybe it's hindsight considering what happens in 3 and then the 2 shows and a bunch of other stuff, but I legit found myself enjoying this movie even more than I was expecting to. And I was already expecting to enjoy it a lot because I enjoyed the absolute flying flip out of this movie as a kid. And watching it now, yeah, it's gotten even better. Not only because I'm more grown up now and I understand it's more darker themes and it's more adult philosophical elements, but also because on just a pure entertainment factor, I found myself enjoying this even more than I already did. And keep in mind, I absolutely loved the flying frick out of this movie when I first saw it. And yes, I'm not going to curse in this video because I want to make sure kids can actually watch this review. With the exception of 1 curse word, which I'll throw in there because, I mean, let's be honest, guys, most people in their videos swear at least once. So, it's only going to be 1 curse word. It's not even going to be that bad of one. So that's just your warning. But outside of that, no cursing, no spoilers. And I have a really long written review for this one. So, now that we are almost 4 minutes into this freaking review, my goodness, I'm slow today. Let's dive straight in to Kung Fu Panda. And like I said, no spoilers. While I've definitely not hit any of my concerns regarding the upcoming 4th installment, I was beyond excited to revisit my all-time favorite DreamWorks franchise and finally give it the highly praising review it's rightfully earned. And thankfully, that time has arrived. Today. Starting with the original that started it all, that absolutely nobody had faith in when it was first announced following the huge back-to-back disappointments of B-Movie and Shrek 3. Yeah, in other words, big yikes. But yet, just like the Dragon Warrior himself, when its time finally arrived in 2008 to show what it was made of, it rose above the score and proved all the naysayers wrong, becoming critically acclaimed, making an astounding $631.7 million at the box office off of a budget of only $130 million. So yeah, they made a pretty big profit off of this one, cementing its legacy as the highest grossing animated film of 2008, as well as the 3rd highest grossing film overall of that same year. And I assume that 2 was Iron Man and 1 was Dark Knight. Just a assumption. and clearly setting itself as the company's next big promising franchise with Shrek out of commission. And they even tried to bring it back after this franchise started, and yeah, we know how that turned out. We'll get to that failure when we get to that failure. But for right now, we're staying positive. Let's just stay on topic here. It was truly a story of never judging a book by its cover, and to this day is still very highly praised by both fans and critics. But how does it hold up almost 20 years later? Well, not only is it still just as great as it's always been, but I'd argue that time has actually made the film even stronger. Now for the ton of positives I have for this movie, because I have a ton to praise about this movie. The animation is awesome and bursting with energy. The voice acting is fantastic from the entire cast. Jack Black, the obvious standout and arguably the most iconic role of a career full of iconic roles. The story is amazing and perfectly nails its genius concept. Tai Lung, here comes the swear word, you ready? Tai Lung is a badass villain. That's the one curse word you're getting in the video. And it's because I literally could not find a better way to describe him. The characters are multidimensional and fascinating in anything but cardboard cutouts. The world building is wonderful and pays great respect to the Chinese culture. The fight scenes are insane with choreography, very accurate to actual martial arts, and a very fast, fluid movement speed that's absolutely jaw-dropping. Great pacing that gives every moment the right amount of time it needs to be effective. The very sharp writing that's witty and charming. Not quite as sharp as Megamind, but it's close. Superb humor that always lands, like this movie is very funny. Again, not as funny as Megamind, but it's still really funny. A wild final battle with a very satisfying conclusion, high tension all throughout that rarely ever lets up, a deep philosophical message of finding yourself and who you're truly meant to be, a perfect runtime that doesn't overstay its welcome, and very high rewatchability. I cannot count how many times I've been watching this movie ever since it first came out. I watched it as a kid, I watched it as a teenager, and I'm watching it again as an adult. So with all these strengths, what could possibly be the flaw, you may be asking? Well, this might just be a me thing, but my big problem with this movie that still has not changed since I first saw it is tonal whiplash. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by that, it's a term that means that when a tone of a scene switches from one tone all the way to something different with no transition. For example, when I reviewed the Miraculous New York special, I had the same problem. The way it suddenly switched between trying to be serious and trying to be silly. It just didn't quite work, and there was no smooth transition between each. Here, it's kind of the same problem, but it's not nearly as damaging. Some scenes have a silly and goofy tone, while others are deep and very, very emotional. And there's no smooth transition between the two, so at times it can harm the weight of the emotional scenes, as well as the goofiness of the sillier ones. Now, these aren't technically spoilers, because these aren't really like big moments in the movie. It's just two little scenes that I can think of that make me think of this specific problem. But if you want to, I guess consider it minor spoilers, but, I mean, movie's almost 20 years old, guys. Catch up. For example, the former Tigress's telling of Tai Lung's backstory. For the most part, it's sad, it's tragic, and very well handled, but then it's immediately interrupted by Po making a silly face from Mantis hitting his facial nerves while giving him acupuncture, which in turn lessens the impact of the moment. And for an example of the latter, Po serving the Furious Five homemade noodles. For the most part, it is fittingly silly, and Po imitating Shifu is still one of the funniest parts of the movie. But then it just immediately shifts into seriousness with Shifu arriving and exclaiming that Tai Lung broke out of prison, which in turn makes us, the audience, feel bad for laughing. Which I guess probably the intention here, but still just feels off, if you know what I'm trying to say. It just feels a little off. What was it? It's difficult to really articulate without spoilers, but it really is a problem and causes a good bit of confusion at times. However, that's literally its only flaw, because regardless, I still absolutely adore this movie. Kung Fu Panda is a clever, action-packed, charming, funny, and all-around incredible animated film that perfectly lays down a very strong foundation to be built upon in later installments, while simultaneously being more than solid in its own right. Even in the year of Iron Man and the Dark Knight, this still managed to hold its own and forge its own legacy, becoming a modern animated classic. And I'm not really sure what else I can say, because that pretty much just sums up all my thoughts on this movie, again, without spoilers. So, with all that said, I think it's about time I give my final verdict for this first Kung Fu Panda, which is going to be a 9 out of 10. It was originally an 8, but this recent rewatch, everything started to click more, I was enjoying myself more, and it jumped up from an 8 to a 9. I even thought about just giving it an 8.5, but the more I thought about it, no. It's a 9 out of 10. It is a fantastic animated film, even all these years later. If you, for whatever reason, have not seen this yet, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Without a doubt, an absolute gem in DreamWorks' very, very inconsistent history, and the start of, again, my personal pick for their best franchise. And yet, the best was still to come. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you all about it next time. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching this review. Watch this movie, guys. Don't be scared by it because it's animation. Watch this movie. It is more than worth your time. So, with all that said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time when we talk about that best that was still to come. And that best that was still to come, again, I'll tell you all about it when we dive into the masterpiece of Kung Fu Panda 2.